Shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you for the invitation. So my name is Eitan Bar. I'm coming from Israel, where I was born and raised almost 40 years ago, in the city of Tel Aviv. My Jewish mother always said I can do anything I want in life, as long as it's a lawyer or a doctor. But she never said what kind of a doctor. And trust me, Christian theology was not on her mind. I'm one of the leaders of a ministry called One for Israel. We are a grassroots ministry, and we share the gospel with the Jewish people in Israel. We also operate the one and only Hebrew-speaking Bible college in Israel and the world for Christians. And we serve Jews and Arabs who follow Yeshua, Jesus. Today, I want to talk to you about Israel, anti-Semitism, and evangelism. I think you all will agree with me that if a Christian reads the Bible, the scriptures, he quickly finds out that most events take place in Israel. Jerusalem is mentioned over 800 times in scriptures. Israel is mentioned over 2,300 times in scriptures. Almost all of the characters of the Bible, mainly in the New Testament, are Israeli Jews like me. Think about the book of Acts. The very first church in history, almost exclusively Jews. So you would think that today, everyone in Israel is probably a Christian Jew. In Israel today, only 0.4% believes Jesus is the Messiah. That is a drastic change. Quite a few historical, religious, and political explanations for that change. However we can explain it, there is a spiritual reality behind it. Maybe even two. One on our side, the Jewish people, and another one, let's call it a demonic resistance. Let's discuss us first. In Romans chapter 11, verses 25 and 26, I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. And it seems many get confused by all Israel will be saved. They think that every single Jew from the beginning of time will be saved. But that is not what Paul is saying here. Last week we celebrated Passover in Israel. When we celebrate the Exodus, we say that all Israel left Egypt. Do we mean that every single Jew that was ever alive came out of Egypt? Of course not. We are thinking of a very specific time in history. In that same way, Paul says that in the future there will be a time that all of Israel combined together will come to know the Lord. And it might be the only time in history that you will see a whole nation at the same time, everybody inside it coming to know the Lord. When? One hint we already read, until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Today, Christians number 2.4 billion people worldwide within 7,163 people groups. I don't know if it's fullness of the Gentiles, but it sounds a lot. Second hint comes from Jesus himself just before his crucifixion in Matthew chapter 23, verse 39. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So Jesus is telling Jerusalem is not coming back again until we, Israel, say, welcome back. And this goes hand in hand with what we just read in Romans chapter 11. So I don't know when it will happen, but it doesn't sound very far away. It seems obvious that there is a very strong connection between the coming of Jesus and the acceptance of Israel of the Messiah. But Israel accepting Christ is not going to be easy, because with respect to the rest of the world, we are not like anybody else. And it's not a positive thing. In the book of Exodus, and much later in the book of Acts, we, the nation of Israel, are described as stiff-necked people. From Exodus to Acts, you have 1,500 years where we are stiff-necked. As an Israeli Jew myself, let me admit and tell you, we are still very much stiff-necked today, even killing our own Messiah repeatedly for 2,000 years now. But the real story here is not even about Israel. It is about the God of Israel. What do I mean? When I grew up in Israel, I played a lot of computer sport games. When you play soccer or any other sport on the computer, you're the coach and you get to select the team you want to play with. Most people will select the wealthiest team with the biggest squad and the best players, like Bayern Munich or Barcelona. And then it's quite easy to win every single game and take the championship. But then it's not really about you as the coach. It's about the team, the players, and the big budget behind it. If you want to prove that you are the best coach, you need to pick the weakest team with the smallest squad where all the players are stiff-necked and have no budget because they are slaves in Egypt. And with them, win games and win the championship. That is why God is the greatest coach of all. Because he's going to win the game against Satan with us. Deuteronomy 7:7, it was not because you were more in number than any other people that the Lord set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of all people, fewest and slaves. But from our rejection of Christ, because we are stiff-necked, salvation came to you. Do you understand the logic behind this? Isn't it a bit of a strange logic? I think you have to be an Israeli to understand that logic. If we accepted Jesus as our leader, but we would never ever share him with you. That is probably why we should be the very last ones to finally accept him. So that's our story. But I told you there is also a demonic reality behind the scene. Now, obviously, Satan doesn't want anyone to be saved, but it's not like he really cares about you. He's only using you in his great game of chess against God. It is in Satan's best interest that we Jews will never believe in Jesus. Because as we saw, when we finally do believe in Jesus, it means checkmate and game over for Satan.
Ja, sjakkmatt, det er over og ut for Satan i det øyeblikket.
We also say shachmat. So I believe that Satan is behind the other reason why we Jews find it very easy to reject Christ. And if I told you Judaism is stiff-necked, Christianity can be stiff-necked as well. In Judaism, there is a lot of preconceived ideas about who Jesus is, and all of them are negative. And there is a reason, which we get to experience for 2,000 years now. And that is anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism in the name of Christ. Time is very short, so I'm only going to choose a few examples of anti-Semitism in church history in the name of Christ. Let's start with some church fathers. Saint Gregory of Nicaea, he said, the Jews are a brood of vipers, haters of goodness. Saint Ambrose said, God always hated the Jews. It is essential that all Christians hate them as well. Have you heard about the Council of Nicaea? Constantine invited bishops from all over the Roman empires, but forbid those with Jewish background to come. In that council, they changed the Sabbath day to Sunday and systematically removed anything Jewish from Christianity, forbidding to even have a meal with Jewish people. About 1,000 years later, First Crusade, mass slaughter of Jews by the Crusaders, and when the Jews hid in synagogues, they would be burned alive. Inquisition and exile. The Inquisition took place from 12th to the 15th centuries, where the Catholic Church would force Jews to convert to Christianity by means of torture. And if a Jew would convert, they would give him a new nickname, Marrano, which means a pig. Jumping forward, Martin Luther. No doubt he brought a great reformation to the church, but at some point he also became very anti-Semitic. In year 1542, he wrote a book on the Jews and their lies. And in the book, Luther encouraged Christians to burn down synagogues and Jewish schools. He wrote, their private houses must be destroyed, burn their synagogues, suggesting to kill Jews who are not willing to convert to Christianity. He wrote, we are at fault in not slaying them. The pogroms took place from the 19th to the 20th centuries, where Christians would put on fire synagogues and Jewish stores. Now, when in the pogroms and in the crusades you burn down a synagogue, do you know what else you burn? You also burn the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament. And that symbolically represents a lot of the way some Christians saw the scriptures in Judaism. Holocaust. In 1933, Martin Luther's wish finally came true. When Adolf Hitler met with Bishop Berning, he said, "I am thereby doing Christianity a great service by pushing them Jews out of schools and public functions." We cannot ignore the fact that Christian anti-Semitism is the stage for the Holocaust. And that is not even my statement. Archbishop Robert Runcie admitted, "Without the poisoning of Christian minds through the centuries, the Holocaust is unthinkable." My grandparents were in the Holocaust. The Nazis took everything from my family and became very poor. At some point where they took my grandmother to a camp, they started to torture her. They tied my grandmother. They pulled the nails out of her fingers. They told her that that's because she rejected Christ. Obviously, that is nonsense, but this is how we Jews understand Christians and Christianity. Also in the Holocaust, during Christmas time, my grandparents and other Jews would hear the Nazi soldiers celebrating Christmas with singing Christmas carols. How distorted is that? But now you understand why, with the re-establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, all over Israel, you had about 30 Jewish believers in Jesus. We Jews automatically associate Christians with all the horrible anti-Semitic things that happen to us. So it's very easy for us, whenever, let's say, a Christian missionary comes to Israel, to label him, put him in a box, and ignore his message. We might smile and be friendly. For 2,000 years, therefore, the gospel was kept away from us Jews. But things are now changing. Israeli Jews are now coming to know the Lord, and in larger numbers than ever before. Because now, it is Israeli Jews who share the gospel with our own people. It's not coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside. The gospel is not being presented to us in a foreign language, from foreign people who do not understand how Jewish people think, do not get our mentality, they don't know our costumes and culture, and they don't understand the history that I just described to you. Of course, they mean well when they come, their hearts is in a good place, so it's super easy to ignore them. But we also share a different Jesus. And it sounds a bit strange, I know, but let me explain. The Jesus that we share is not blonde, it doesn't have a very pale skin, it doesn't have blue eyes, and he's also not weak and dead on a Roman Catholic cross. It's very difficult to relate to someone who is dead like this for 2,000 years. So we share somebody else with them. It's a Jewish Messiah. And his name is not Jesus, it's Yeshua. Yeshua in Hebrew means salvation. And he's an Israeli looking. He's not dead. He's alive and he's changing people's lives every day. So this is a game changer for us in Israel. Because finally the gospel is accessible to Israeli Jews in the Hebrew language by Jewish Israelis like them. You know, up until a few years ago, the Orthodox rabbis successfully blocked the message of the gospel from the people of Israel. And we cannot just walk into a synagogue and start sharing the gospel. Paul tried it and he got some stones at him. But thankfully today, we have something else. It's a new wineskin. It's called the internet. Everybody have access to that. So we don't need the rabbi's permission anymore. And we can not only share the gospel, but we can also publicly challenge the rabbinic way. And we do it in front of the eyes of millions in Israel. But they don't really like that. Do you remember the Pharisees in the New Testament? There used to be a lot of different sects in Judaism. But only the Pharisees survived, and that's modern Judaism. And if you remember, they didn't really like Christians. So in Israel, just like in Norway, everyone everywhere is connected to high-speed internet connection. Very easy because it's a tiny little country. We are first in the world in the amount of time we spend online. Also leading the world in the amount of time we spend on YouTube watching video clips. So we meet Israelis where they are at. And that is not the synagogues. It's online. When I grew up in Israel, nobody in the schooling system ever told us anything about Jesus. In 12 years, I do not recall the name Jesus being mentioned even once. That's the average situation in Israel. Things have changed a little bit, but still a lot of challenges, because if you walk into a bookstore in Israel and you go to the religious section, and let's say today you feel like checking out Islam. So you have a few different Hebrew translations of the Quran to pick from. You go back home, you binge on the Quran all night. Tomorrow you feel like checking out mysticism from the East. You go back to the bookstore and you can find whatever you want from Buddhism and Hinduism and whatever you want. Maybe the day after you feel like checking out Christianity. So you go back to the bookstore, they know you by now, and you tell them, this time I came for the New Testament. They're going to look at you as if you fell down from the moon. There is no New Testament in Israeli bookstores. It is nowhere to be found. So those kind of things that here you take for granted, like being able to buy a Bible, in Israel it's a different story. Most Israelis, up until a few years ago, would only come to know the Lord if they got exposure to the gospel outside. That's what actually happened to me. I was in Canada for a few weeks. I heard the gospel. I saw Christians who love God. I saw how they know the Bible much better than I do. They worship my God, and they pray to Him. They have a conversation with Him. They know a lot about Him, but it's my God. I'm the Jew from Israel. And they were Gentile Canadians. How do they know about my God? And why don't I know my God? So that is a good way to provoke us to jealousy, in the words of Paul the Apostle. And they actually loved me to jealousy, in contrast to, torturing me to believe. The Orthodox rabbis today tell Jewish people that there is no such thing as a Jew who believes in Jesus. You cannot be a Jew and believe in Jesus, they say. One rabbi even said that a Jew who believes in Jesus is like a vegetarian who eats meat. So in the last few years, we started to produce hundreds of videos in Hebrew, which inside Israel alone, and Israel is a country of 9 million people,
Och det bor 9 miljoner inbyggare i Israel.
were viewed over 40 million times. We also have a Christian radio station, and we do a lot of things through the phone, like an app for the New Testament. I want to share with you what kind of videos we produce. Remember, you cannot be a vegetarian and eat meat? So we produced a lot of videos of the stories of those vegetarians who do eat meat, both in Hebrew and in English, because Jewish people are outside of Israel as well. And in a second, I'm going to show you on the screens a little tiny taste of them. We have about 150 of them. And inside Israel, they have 25 million views to them. So there will be two videos. The first one is like a compilation or a trailer of 1 minute of the English version, and then 2 minutes of the Hebrew version.
I want to tell you a story.
I used to believe that Jesus was a Catholic God, God of the Gentiles.
I imagined that Jesus was Italian.
The New Testament was one of those books that I saw nuns reading on the subway.
I was expecting to find a handbook on how to persecute the Jews. I'm reading a story written by Jews about Jewish people.
One thing you don't do is you don't talk about Jesus.
I'm gonna get ostracized. They're gonna think I'm crazy. And
are you out of your mind? You're not Jewish anymore.
Absolutely not. Do not look into this.
You are a traitor to your people.
Jesus was the Messiah.
He wants relationship. He wants fellowship. Believing in Jesus is the most Jewish thing I can do.
I mean, to have a close relationship with God, the truth is worth it. Life with Yeshua would be worth it.
להיות מוחשב כאחד משונאי ישראל זה מצב מאוד מאוד לא נעים.
ובאיזשהו שלב נורא פחדתי מהזהות של עצמי.
מה יקרה? מה יגידו ההורים שלי? מה יגידו האחים שלי?
לא יודעת איך אנשים יגיבו.
עם ישראל הוא עם קשה עורף. כשאתה מאמין בישוע, אנשים יקללו אותך.
קיבלתי איומים על החיים שלי.
לקבל יריקה, לקבל דחיפה, לקבל החרמות וכן הלאה.
אנחנו הולכים לעשות הכל כדי שאתה תפסיק להאמין. דחייה, שנאה, איומים.
לא רציתי להפסיק להאמין. אבא שלי התחיל להרביץ לי. קיבלתי מכות.
רק בגלל שאני מאמין בישוע.
אסור לי לדבר על זה.
ולכן האינסטינקט הוא להסתיר את זה.
אף אחד לא צריך לדעת על זה.
התביישתי בזה. זאת האמת. איך זה שעם שלם הולך אחרי הוראת שקר?
האם מנסים להסתיר מאיתנו משהו?
2000 שנה משקרים לעם שלי.
תקשיבו.
ישוע.
יהודי לחלוטין.
הוא חיכה 2000 שנה.
ישוע הוא אל שדי.
הוא משלנו.
הוא המשיח היהודי.
הוא מת בשביל כולנו.
ישוע קפץ למים להוציא אותי.
הוא נתן לי חיים במוות שלו.
איך אפשר לא לתת את החיים שלך בשביל מישהו שעשה דבר כזה בשבילך?
אין מצב שאני אגיד לזה לא.
האהבה הזאתי.
אהבה מושלמת.
אנשים זקוקים לישוע.
איך אני יכול לשמור כזה דבר בסוד?
אני יהודי שמאמין בישוע המשיח.
כבר לא חיפשתי להסתתר.
אני לא יכולה להתכחש בתוך תוכי.
והחלטתי פשוט ללכת אחריו.
אין יותר אמיתי מזה עכשיו, כבר כל המדינה יודעים על זה.
הרגשתי חופשי, ממש חופשי וקל.
But we also do a lot in regards to sharing the gospel. And in Judaism, it's extremely difficult because the Orthodox rabbis have been developing 2,000 years worth of objections against Jesus. So for us, sharing the gospel includes also apologetics, answering those objections, explaining the logic behind the gospel, because you have to remember that Jewish people already have doctrines in their mind. They see God in a certain way. And the gospel presents God in a different way. So we have to go back to the Old Testament, to the Hebrew scriptures, and show them how the Old Testament points to Yeshua. Ever since we started with all those kind of different videos, about 7 years ago, we saw a lot of Jewish people coming to know the Lord. And as a side effect, we saw Arab Israelis coming to know the Lord. Because the Arabs are seeing Jewish people coming to know the Lord, and they think, what's going on here? So they check it out, and then they come to know the Lord. And Jews and Arabs coming to know the Lord is very important. Soon I'll tell you why. The point is that today we are no longer 30. We are at least 30,000 believers in Israel. This is a wonderful situation that led to two things. Of course, Jewish people are coming to know the Lord and hearing the gospel. People recognize us on the streets now. We made it to the national news a few times. So we basically became the face of Christianity in Israel. You know, we keep getting a lot of messages from Israelis. And I want to read to you one message that came in, which gives a good model for the kind of messages we get. It's coming from Rachel, teenager from Tel Aviv. So obviously it came in Hebrew. I'll translate to English. Shalom, as you can imagine, as a child I was taught false things about Yeshua. 2 days ago, we've learned in history class about how 2,000 years ago a new religion began, Christianity. I was amazed to hear how much compassion Yeshua had. By the way, I was amazed that there is a teacher somewhere in Israel that actually quotes Yeshua in school. The next day, there was an advertisement on YouTube for your videos. I always ignore these ads and just click skip, but I decided I do want to watch the whole thing. I ended up watching 50 more. Long story short, I have made a decision, truth is on your side, and the rabbinic Judaism I grew up with around me is full of agendas, false teachings, and is basically a man-made religion. I don't have a unique story to tell, but I saw the truth and I cannot look back. It is important for me to live in truth, not in a lie. Now, although I am still in high school, and I don't know any other Jewish believers in Jesus, and I know people will tease me and be upset with me if they knew that I now believe in Yeshua, it is important for me to find out how to live as a follower of Yeshua. And she really meant it, because soon enough after, she led her mother to the Lord, and even her dad started to come to the church services. So those are the positive things, but remember again the Pharisees? So some of those Pharisees are after us. So me and some other teammates, we get death threats all the time. I'm not a wealthy person, so I cannot buy a home, so we move a lot. We rent, we move a lot. And every time we move, there is another story that happens with the Pharisees. One time, they threw a bag of feces into the backyard, so we decided we'll never live in a house again. We found a tall building, And we moved to an apartment high enough that nobody can throw anything.
Så vi,
Once again, they found out where we live. They printed a lot of pamphlets with pictures, names, and a lot of lies about me, and put it all over the neighborhood's mailboxes. So it's fun, never boring. On another occasion, they broke my car. They came out with videos that they share a story on them. And in that story, they say that I had a debate with a rabbi, and because I couldn't answer his questions, then I beat him up. Obviously, in case you're wondering, it's a lie. They hacked my personal email and accounts on social media and spoke to people in my name. A few months ago, they actually took us to court. They sued us. It was a Hasidic Orthodox Jewish family that their teenage son watched our videos and came to know the Lord. So they decided to sue us. And 2 weeks ago in court, the judge told them, "Are you asking me to change what? Freedom of speech?" So she told them, "I give you a few days to either withdraw or send again revised version." The judge was very nice to them, but they didn't get the hint. They resubmit. So she decided to cancel the entire lawsuit. She fined them, and she also fined them to give us money. So again, there is a lot of action going on. It's like the book of Acts all over again.
så det mye action, altså. Det som apostelgjerningene på nytt igjen.
But it's important for me to emphasize something. I don't hate them. None of us on our team hate them. We love them. We are there to serve them. And I'm willing to give up my life just to see them getting saved. I want to end with a challenge. How many of you are praying for the peace of Jerusalem? So first of all, thank you. And when you do that, as you see in Psalm 122, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Don't think about political peace. True peace can only be found in the Prince of Peace, which is Jesus. So if you want to see peace in the Middle East, what you actually want to pray for is for Jews and Arabs to come to know the Lord, because He is everyone's Prince of Peace. Tusen tak.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom.